go to YouTube.
Go live?
Mm-hmm. What's that? Oh, yeah. For sure.
Live now?
Just select it. Oh, you have 3 people watching. See? Yeah, that's definitely it. Yeah, that's it.
Go.
1, 2.
Should I say, we will be starting at 6:30. Right. All right, I took a picture of that.
That's easy to remember.
That is, just start that first.
Yeah, because YouTube has to find something.
The other thing that I did is I started recording so that it actually records, because you don't press record on the camera, you press record here and it records it on the hard drive,
Yeah.
which is a little confusing. I messed that up the first time.
Your mic's on too.
Oh, that's fine. Oh my gosh. Who's? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We're going, don't touch. We're going viral. We have 3 minutes. What's that?
Just run up again.
No way. 2 views.
Dr. Dan.
Dr. Dan. All right. Wait, we're missing a lot of people. Holy cow. Well, I'm going to start right at 6:30.
12 people. This one is coming.
Okay, now 11.
About 2 minutes.
Hi. I think we're expecting how many? Like 10 more? 8 more? We're going to wait just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. So. Yeah.
Super behind.
That's normal. And then I did get an email.
So cool.
I just stole that from our
YouTube.
website.
Yeah, that looks good.
Right? That's Agatha Dawson. Did you check her in already?
No.
Right there, bottoms, 21. I think I'm going to get started then.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
See, this makes me a little nervous though. I don't know, because it turned off. I guess so. See, that's the part that I liked, is I was monitoring this when you were presenting, but. How did you get in there? All right, I'm gonna get started. How many are we missing? Oh boy, okay. All right, I think we're gonna get started. We're missing 6 people, but they can catch up online. So, for those that don't know me, I see a lot of familiar faces. I see some new faces though, so welcome. My name's Dan. I am one of, depends on the day, I'll say about 5 pharmacists here. So for a little store that we are, I think we have a lot of pharmacists on site. What we do here is pretty labor intensive. If you know anything about custom compounding, we make all of our medication from scratch. So we're making over 10,000 capsules by hand every week. We probably make over 500 different creams, if anyone's gotten your hormone creams from us, those little tubes that we dispense in.
Is your microphone on? We can't hear you hardly at all.
This is just for the YouTube, so it's not a microphone. I can speak, I'll speak up. So we dispense, lost my train of thought, sorry. But everything that we dispense, we make here. So if you're looking for something that you don't want a filler in, or you want the dye removed, or something like that, we're your pharmacy to help with that. So tonight's talk, we're going to be looking at total gut restoration. So there's a new product that we have available to us, and my goal tonight is to help kind of further explain what leaky gut syndrome is, what causes it, and then how can we test for it, and if we have it or not, and then how can we fix it. So that's kind of the journey we're on. I'm going to try to keep this to, I can get long-winded pretty easily, but I'm going to try to keep this to an hour, and then we'll do questions afterwards, or we can take questions along the way too. If something doesn't make sense at all, we can stop and go over it, because I really want everyone to obviously learn the information that's being presented tonight. So if something doesn't make sense, we can just stop, let me know. So, yes, bless you. So welcome. As I just said, my goal really is for everyone to achieve optimal wellness. When I was in traditional pharmacy, I just felt, of course this is my opinion, but that medications, pharmaceuticals were just a Band-Aid approach. And I think that's not a uncommon feeling with traditional pharmaceuticals. And don't get me wrong, obviously as a pharmacist, we have a lot of, I'll call it traditional medication in our lab that we compound with. But my goal is not for patients to be on any medication, really, right? I think God heals the body, man treats it, we're facilitators of that. And I think even with supplements, obviously we sell a lot of vitamins and herbs and different things like that here, but my goal isn't to just replace the pharmaceutical Band-Aid with a nutritional supplement. It might be a better Band-Aid or a better fix, but ultimately, I think we can all agree that we're trying to heal our body, live an optimal life through diet and lifestyle, ultimately, if we can. So I don't think that's anything new that we're not thinking already. Come on in. I always have a medical disclaimer here just because I am not a physician, so I can't prescribe any medication to you. I can't de-prescribe medication. If you want to have a one-on-one consult with me, you can certainly call Kelly tomorrow or whenever and schedule that. So I do one-on-one appointments where we get really in depth. I will go through all of your medical history. I'll go through all of your medications. I can then report what I find back to your physician of I call them recommendations of, I think Mrs. Jones, doesn't need, if you've heard me talk before, proton pump inhibitors, I don't think we need to be on those for 10 years. So if you're on a, fill in the blank medication, I have a lot of ideas and solutions to help taper off of those medications, and then maybe we don't need the medication at all, or maybe there's a natural supplement that can help replace that. So that's what all the legalese says there. As I already said, we're a custom compounding pharmacy, so we were the first PCAB accredited compounding pharmacy in the state of Wisconsin, so we're very proud of that. One thing about compounding is you don't need to be accredited to compound, you just need a pharmacy license. So you can, I don't want to say walk up to the window, but you can apply for a pharmacy license, and if you have that license, you are good to go. You actually don't have to have any special credentialing to compound, which I think is still really scary. If I gave you a tour of the lab, you'd see all the equipment, the double HEPA filtered hoods, containment hoods that we use to protect the employees, to prevent cross-contamination, the scales that we use, the barcoding, everything. I mean, there's double, triple checks on everything that we make here, and a lot of that isn't required by law. And so my point to this slide is not all compounding pharmacies are created equal. So I always encourage you, if you're going to use a compounding pharmacy, make sure that they're accredited. There are different accreditation boards out there. So we happen to be part of PCAB, but there's other accreditation boards out there as well. So I touched on a little, if you heard me speak, I apologize in advance. I always get ahead of my slides, so we already probably covered most of this, but this is what we're going to talk about tonight. So the healthy gut connection, healthy microbiome, variations in our microbiome, eating to maintain a healthy microbiome. So I just had an avocado about a half an hour ago. As I'm learning through this, I always try to apply what I'm going to teach that night to my own health. And I'm going to actually use quite a bit of my own labs tonight as illustration of what can go really wrong. So we'll talk about that. And then how to restore, how to fix our microbiome if it's messed up. How do we know if it's messed up? We'll look at that. And then some key ingredients to help repair everything. So we'll look at that as well. So as we probably all already know, so public health crisis. I really truly believe, and I'm certainly not alone on this, that with the dysbiosis, that's kind of this silent public crisis that's going on out there, that we know there's a lot of chronic illness and there's more of it going on year after year, but we really don't know why. We know that the gut and the GI tract has something to do with it, or we feel that it might, and so there's a lot to still uncover and unpack. There's actually some studies done with the product that I'll be talking about tonight that actually if we improve our gut microbiome, we can actually improve or lower our risk of even COVID or any type of bacterial or viral infection. So, so some other issues that are going on is, and again, I think these are all things that we generally know, but just so we're all on the same page, but lifespan has increased significantly. But it's at an extreme cost, as I think we all know that. I mean, I'm self-employed here, so my wife and I own the pharmacy. We pay for our own health insurance. I haven't seen a doctor probably for 20 years. There's different reasons for that, of course, but I'm still paying in the money. God forbid I get into a car accident. I think we all know, like, if something happens, we want that health insurance in case something really bad goes wrong. But other than that, I try to stay as healthy as I can. But we know that medication, the cost is just skyrocketing. As we'll get into it a little bit later on in the presentation, but something like Remicade, for example, out-of-pocket cost without insurance is like somewhere over $50,000 a year. So that's just one example. So we should be paying more attention to this, I feel, and the way that our healthcare system, I think, is set up, and I think, again, I'm not alone on this, is that there's a lot of deficiencies. I think we should just scrap what we've got and start over. People are like, oh, let's fix this, or let's, have this new regulation or this and that, and I just think we're beyond that point. So yeah, we've created an economic system where the industry makes money by keeping you alive, but not letting you die. Right? Like we are living longer, but are we really? What's our quality of life for that? I mean, yeah. So yeah, how did we get into this mess? So I think, again, none of this should come to a surprise, but reduced physical activity, poor sleep. If we don't sleep, every patient that walks through the door, I try to ask them, like, how are you sleeping? Because if you're not sleeping, you're not resting and repairing. And so we've got to rest and repair for our bodies to heal. I think intuitively, we all know that. Increased stress, that's sometimes a real hard one with patients that I'm talking to. It's like, yeah, I can't quit my job. I've got, well, I'll use myself as I got 4 kids and I run a business. Like, I'm not immune to stress. Like, we all live in this world, no matter what we're doing. There's stress all around us, it seems like. Exposure to chemicals and toxins. I mean, some of these things we can modify, but there's some things like, can I choose what air I breathe outside? Like, of course not, right? Or sometimes the water that we're drinking. That kind of thing can be challenging at times. Like we just installed an RO system here at our pharmacy. It wasn't that long ago, 2 years ago. I mean, I would not, I should probably, scrub this from the YouTube video, but the Brookfield water here is not great to drink if you don't know that. So I recommend at least get a Brita filter, something like that. Food supply changes. So like, do we really know of the food that we ate today? Did it come, and where did it even come from? We have to kind of ask that question. We should try to be eating locally as much as we can. I think these, again, are all things that we know, but I don't know where my avocado came from that I just ate 30 minutes ago. I bet it was from Mexico is my guess. But yeah. And so how do we reverse this? How do we kind of turn back the clock? I think we've gone like way too far down this trail, and we've got to figure out a new path to take. And so we'll circle back to this issue here that's going on with this landfill. I'll leave that kind of all the way to the end here. So file this slide in the back of your brain. I actually live by a landfill too, which sucks. I live just north of County Line and just west of Fond du Lac Avenue, if you guys know where that is. Yeah. It's not when the wind blows, it's actually when it rains that it really stinks. Funny how my, when we bought the house, that was never meant, like, oh, this is a beautiful house. I wonder why it's so airtight too. That was interesting. Probably did that for a reason, right? So, healthy gut connection. So, a definition of a healthy gut, we can kind of define this a few different ways, and I don't think even the researchers we haven't really agreed on what a healthy gut really is. So, some of these things are kind of loose. But definition of a healthy gut can be difficult to characterize. Our culture has overpromised health improvements just by fixing our gut. I've seen that even just researching for tonight's talk. I don't want to overpromise anything to anyone, especially with what I'm going to talk about tonight, because we're going to cover a whole list of disease states. And I don't want you to leave going like, if I just take a probiotic, I will be well again, so that's not what I'm saying. So just kind of keep that in mind. I mean, there's I think we could take any disease state, any kind of issue, and there's probably 10 pieces of the puzzle or influencers that are possibly causing that issue. So just be aware of that. A healthy microbiome is a moving target. So when we're talking about bacteria, there's different concentrations of bacteria everywhere from the mouth all the way. You got the small intestine, you got the large intestine, you got the colon. I mean, there's different bacteria, different concentrations all over that GI tract. So we're trying to shoot at a moving target often. So we've got to keep that in our minds as well too. And then healthy gut integrity is relatively stable. Sometimes it's not. Like, what if you go on vacation and you can't control what you're being fed, or you get a sinus infection, and I mean, you're gonna take an antibiotic or not? Like, all of my kids, unfortunately, I think all of them have had. I know 3 out of the 4 definitely have had antibiotics already. So it's like, what are you going to do? Just let you got to kind of weigh things out, is my point on that. So what makes a healthy gut? So we know in general there's a few different things that can make our GI tract healthy. So the endocrine system, it produces all types of different hormones that our body needs. So examples I put on here: gastrin. I could talk all day about gastrin, which, has anyone even heard of gastrin before? Probably, yeah. So gastrin is an enzyme that helps to increase the amount of stomach acid in your stomach when you eat a meal. So if you don't have enough gastrin, you potentially might not have enough stomach acid to digest a steak. And so if you have an aversion to meat, I've had patients that say, yeah, meat or a lot of heavy animal products, I just don't do well digesting them. That might be a patient that just doesn't produce enough stomach acid. They might not produce enough gastrin. Their stomach wall might be very thin, so they don't have enough what they call parietal cells to actually produce the gastrin in the first place. So we've got to start thinking about just even the stomach as releasing and producing hormones. And so that's important to not forget. Or like ghrelin's a real popular one, the hunger hormone. So, do you have the hormone that is produced by the GI tract to tell you when you're hungry? And are you overproducing it? Are you underproducing it? Or do you have the hormone that tells you when you're full? And do you have enough of that or not? So the leptin hormone, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. We had a talk a few years ago with, I think it was Dr. Muth that did the talk on leptins and then leptin resistance and all of that. So think of your GI tract not as just absorbing and digesting food, but it's endocrine. It's hormone chemical messengers that are being produced. And do we have enough of them? Do we not have enough of them? And then the immune system. That's another integration here where when I think of my stomach, I'm not really thinking of my immune system, honestly. I know that stomach acid is important to help kind of, and we know we don't eat sterile food, of course, but when we start eating our food, the immune system has to interface with what we're eating, making sure that we don't have too much bacteria in that food. So obviously gastrin and hydrochloric acid in our stomach is killing a lot of that bacteria and viruses and such. So we got to make sure the immune system is protecting us against those pathogens. But at the same time, and we'll talk about this in a little while too, that we want to make sure the immune system is kind of like Goldilocks. We don't want the immune system to be too weak, but we don't want it to be too overactive at the same time. We want to find that delicate balance. So that's important. We'll talk more about that. And then the nervous system is involved with the whole GI tract. Do we have peristalsis? Can we, as we eat our food, does the food empty out of the stomach and into the small intestine appropriately, and then into the large intestine? Are we going to the bathroom every day? I mean, I honestly have patients that go to the bathroom once a week, and that's normal for them. And it's like, well, it's normal for you, but it's not helping your psoriasis or whatever the case may be. So.
Peristalsis, is that going on all the time, whether you feel it or not?
It is, yeah. And it's kind of like a roller. It ebbs and flows, but yes, yeah. I would say it's always there.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some doctors who say you should be going every time you eat. That's crazy.
I've heard that too, but let's not get into that tonight. But yeah, if you could just get once a day for me, I'm good with that. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that argument. Like, where are the other 2 meals going if you're not going to the bed? Yeah. All right. I try to be realistic with some of these things too. Yeah. Healthy gut metabolism. So, as I just said, so enough hormones are produced to tell us that we're hungry. Enough hormones produced telling us that we're full. So we want to make sure we've got both of those things going on in our stomach. So we're kind of getting deeper into the science here, but healthy gut immune system. So we've got, I apologize ahead of time. I am not great at PowerPoint slides, so like if anyone out there wants to make my slides for me next time, let me know. See me afterwards. But this is my this icon of an immune cell in the GI tract. So these gut immune cells are isolated, I'm just going to read this, from the microbiome by 2 layers. First, there's a layer of cells called the gut epithelium, so that's indicated by these purple cells. So what's in your, let's look at the small intestines for right now, but you've got this thin layer of epithelial cells that separates your food that's in your small intestines and in your bloodstream, because right on the other side of these purple cells, that's going to be your bloodstream. And we want to make sure that that's separated by those cells. The other thing we want to make sure, though, is that, again, this little guy here, we'll call it the immune cell, is also separated. It's kind of hard to see in this slide, but that blue layer is the mucus. So we want to make sure we've got a layer of mucus sitting there between what's in our stomach or what's in our intestines and what's in our bloodstream here. So if this, and we'll get to this in one of the next slides, but if this mucin layer thins out or these cells start to break apart, that immune cell that's sitting there, it gets very unhappy. It likes a nice barrier by 2 different ways, one by those cells and 2 by that mucus layer. So if either one of those layers breaks down, we've got trouble.
May I ask, how is that diagnosed, or is it through scope?
So you can diagnose if you've got. We'll hold that thought. We'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. Yeah. So again, as I just said, there's a double layer of defense: the mucus and the cells themselves. It's designed to prevent chronic immune system activation. This barrier can be damaged by, and we're going to get to that. Let's go to that next slide. All kinds of different things. So too little fiber. So why is that? Because the bacteria in our GI tract, some of those guys are actually helping to produce that mucus layer. So they need fiber as fuel to thrive, and then the bacteria themselves are actually helping to produce that mucus layer. So that's important. Too much sugar, just eating too much high fructose corn syrup or table sugar can cause damage to those cells. Too much fat, so especially, it depends on the fat that we're talking about. Really saturated fat is the culprit here, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. That's why I had the avocado and not what I normally have. Because if you listen to my talk, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago about ketogenic dieting, I did a talk on that, and my diet was, yeah. Well, because I brought it up, with ketogenic dieting, obviously it's a lot of fat, right? It's 70–80% fat. We want to start thinking of those fats as healthy fats. It's not all coming from animal fat, in my opinion. I personally did a lot of coconut oil, but that's, again, a lot of saturated fat, so I probably should have picked some more polyunsaturated fats, some more avocados, olive oil, olives, things like that. So. Too many emulsifiers. That really gets into, emulsifiers can actually break down this 2-barrier protective layer. So anything that's processed, that's the way I think of that. If it's on a label and you can't read it, not that it's an emulsifier, but so probably think twice about putting it in our body. Too many artificial sweeteners, just too many additives in general. We'll get into this a little bit, but we can actually test now if we're sensitive to dyes or food colorings, so that could be a problem. So, in other words, so if you're eating the standard American diet, all of this looks really great to me right now, but we probably shouldn't be putting any of this into our GI tract if we want to keep it healthy and functioning properly, or at least not putting it in all the time. Let's put it that way. I'll let you eat like that maybe once a week, but so. Just to kind of reiterate, so lack of fiber, so if we have a lack of fiber, we're not feeding our microbiome. We're not feeding all the bacteria the fuel they need to thrive to then produce their end products that they help us or that they make for us.
Can you just trying to figure out what to do with fiber?
Mm-hmm.
Because some people say too much fiber is not processed by the stomach and then will create problems.
Yes,
in
that's
the rest of the digestive tract, and then too little fiber doesn't give you enough fiber in the digestive tract. So how do you figure out?
I usually say like 30 to 50 grams, which is a lot of fiber a day, but to go up like every week, add literally start at 5 grams of fiber a day and do that for a week, or wherever you're at now, and just add like 5 grams per week. Go really slow, because if you were to go out tomorrow, and you don't, the other thing, that's a great point, because if you get too much fiber, not enough water, you can get constipated. You can go the other way, because fiber should be helping us go into the bathroom, but if we're dehydrated, we're not drinking enough water, that could be a problem. And you don't want to feed the good guys and the bad guys really all at the same time, and then you've got a war going on in your stomach, essentially, or your intestines. Yep, so you want to go very incrementally about that. And we'll talk about, we're not going to get too deep into fiber, but like soluble fiber versus insoluble fiber. We got to balance those two out. The other thing too, we have a fiber that's available to us that's basically, I call it like a prebiotic, essentially is what it is, that specific bacteria feed on. So we're not feeding the bad guys, we're just feeding the good guys. So we'll talk about that too. So what ends up happening is, if we have a lack of fiber, that mucin layer starts to thin, because the bacteria aren't helping us produce that mucin layer, that mucus layer. So the microbiome, because we're not giving it the fuel they need, it will actually eat up that blue layer. They can use that as an alternative fuel, which sucks for us eventually. I mean, they don't care where their fuel's really coming from, but we do. And so that blue layer starts to thin out. They're actually eating this up. So these little bugs in here, if they're not getting the fuel they need, they're actually going to turn to the host, us, and our mucus layer, and start feeding off of that. But then those cells, that really bad picture I showed you, that immune cell that's sitting in our bloodstream over here, is not going to get happy. It's going to.
Is that reversible?
Yes, it is. Yep, and I'll show you. We're going to get to that too. So they call them dendritic cells. Not that that name's important, but they've got these little finger-like projections on these immune cells that kind of take a temperature check inside the GI tract on the other side of those epithelial cells. And they start to get angry if that mucin layer starts to thin. They don't like it super thin. They start to get antsy. So then here's what happens. Inflammation ensues. You get irritable bowel syndrome. You can get Crohn's disease. I mean, there's a whole list of things we're going to get through tonight. Those cells that are stacked up like bricks with mortar in between them, those, we call them tight junctions, those can start to loosen up. So that becomes a problem. And then your net result is what we call leaky gut, where those epithelial cells have split apart so much that you're actually getting food particles into your bloodstream that shouldn't be there. A great example of this is gluten and Hashimoto's. So for those that know Hashimoto's, your immune system is attacking its own thyroid tissue. And so why do we tell patients with Hashimoto's to not eat gluten? That gliadin protein that makes up gluten, when you have leaky gut, that gliadin protein will get into your bloodstream, and it's basically then the immune system will start attacking that gliadin. But that gliadin protein, or that antibody that you're now attacking that protein with, will actually go up to your thyroid cells and kill those because they look very similar. If that makes sense. So that's where any patient that walks in, I sit down with them, they're talking to them about Hashimoto's, they come in here for thyroid medication, you've got to be gluten-free. I don't care if you're not, you don't have to be celiac where you have an allergy to gluten. It's definitely not going to help you with your Hashimoto's because you're going to have a high risk of cross-reactivity there, where you're making more of your TPO antibodies because you're eating gluten the antibodies are attacking the gluten. When the gluten's all attacked, that antibody's still floating around in your bloodstream. It's like, oh, now it's going to come across your thyroid tissue and start attacking that. So that's when your doctor is measuring your antibody level. How high is it? You know, we don't want your antibodies to be very high, because then it's just telling your, you know, to keep attacking your thyroid tissue.
Just went to the doctor for physical this week, and my son died the end of January, and they told us that he had
Hashimoto's.
Hashimoto's.
I'd be interested to see what his antibody levels were.
But the doctor said it doesn't matter, as long as, because I asked to be tested or something, because they said it was hereditary.
Yeah.
And I take thyroid medication too. He said it really doesn't matter as long as your TSH
Yeah.
is right in that, you know, good range, and T4.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
made nothing of it.
Yeah. And that's I think that's the unfortunate part of our medical system, is we're looking at, I'm going to call it old information on how we treat disease. We've got better ways to, in my opinion, how to treat stuff. Yeah. So we could spend a whole hour talking on that. Yeah. Talking about peristalsis. So the other thing too, so it says proper integration of millions of nerve cells, regulating contractions and secretions. If the gut nerve system is misfiring, symptoms of pain, irregularity, IBS, SIBO may result. So I hear a lot about SIBO in the functional medicine world that I live in, where you get there is some bacteria, of course, in the small intestine, but a lot of it's going to live in this, my little corny picture here. This is the large intestine, where a lot of the bacteria are hanging out with, or out in. And so sometimes you can get where there's a valve here between the small and large intestine. And if you don't have the right integration of nerves clamping down on this door, so to speak, that's where you can start falling into SIBO issues, where you're getting, again, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Yes, you need certain bacteria in your small intestine, but you don't want too many of them. And that's a whole nother talk tonight too. But part of that is imagine, again, 1 million electrical wires controlling all of your GI tract. All of those things have to be firing properly, at least to be healthy. All right. Yep.
Will you be addressing how we can repair any nerve damage?
I didn't get into that tonight. Yeah, that's a good question, but I left that out. But yeah, yeah, sorry. That's like all vagal nerve stimulation and stuff. Yeah. All right, so the microbiome. We touched on this a little bit, but just so we're all on the same page, this is trillions of, again, I usually been saying bacteria tonight, but there's a whole list of good and bad viruses in our GI tract. There's a whole list of good and bad fungi in our GI. So there's the microbiome and there's the mycobiome. There's a whole book by Dr. Ganyum, which, you know, just talks about not bacteria, but the good and bad fungus that live in our GI tract. So this Ganyum, Ghannoum. Yep. Yep. And so again, there's just so many. We're at the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. There's so many cells in our GI tract. The number of cells in our GI tract outnumber our own human cells 10 to 1. So from a cell-to-cell basis, we are only 10% human then, really. Because the other 90% of our cells is bacteria, fungus. Viruses aren't cells, but bacterial and fungal cells and all that kind of stuff. So that's a crazy number. They support and play key functions. We talked about this in the GI tract. Everyone's microbiome is slightly different, with the first seeding taking place at birth. We all know that, but I mean, there's a whole article about how I can't say the word, cesarean sections, how detrimental they can be to baby's immune health. and they're, predisposed, higher risk for asthma, autoimmune, obesity. The list goes on and on and on. So, some of those things. Again, of course, some of those things we can't control. But if we know that, ahead of time, we might be able to do something about that, right?
Can they test for too much bad bacteria
Yep.
in the small intestine?
Yep, we're going to get to that. Yep, absolutely.
Well, I
Yeah.
see
Yeah. So yeah, and again, with this microbiome, we want diversity, diversity, diversity. I'm going to keep harping on that all night. The interesting point, though, is with quote-unquote healthy individuals, they only share about 10% of their microbiome is actually the same or similar, I'll call it. So it's interesting. There's like a few keystone species of bacteria that kind of rule the roost, is the way I think of it. So that's important to take home too, that it may, in my opinion, when I'm looking through all this research and try to really boil it down, and you're talking about first seeding and vaginal birth versus C-section, is sometimes we're just taking these probiotics or nutritional yeast like Saccharomyces boulardii, a nutritional yeast that I like to use a lot for different reasons. My thought is that we're using those as just transient residents, and they're just kind of pushing out the bad guys so that our natural flora, the flora that we were born with the day that we were born, can grow up again and take care of itself, so to speak. So that's something to kind of just keep in our thoughts as well tonight. It's not the microbes themselves. So my point is, I should read my own slides here, right? It's not the microbes and the compounds and the signaling compounds that they manufacture. So there might be more than one bug. You might have a bug that produces short-chain fatty acids, and I have a different bug, but it too also produces a short-chain fatty acid. We're going to talk about short-chain fatty acids in a minute, but I'll talk about them now. But we need short-chain fatty acids to help repair that mucin layer and to help repair those epithelial cells, especially. So short-chain fatty acids will actually compound. There's 3 key short-chain fatty acids out there. We'll compound enemas for patients with Crohn's to basically heal up. If they have not to be too gross here, but like their descending colon, before their anus is all, I say raw like hamburger. It's red, it's bloody, like the whole lining of their large intestine is just, they're going to remove it essentially. It's that bad. You can give them a short-chain fatty acid enema, and you do that like twice a day for a month, and you can see miraculous healing of just giving patients short-chain fatty acids. Or you could argue, and that's probably an extreme case, but for the general patient, to keep their GI tract and their colon working well, make sure you've got the right bacteria that produce the short-chain fatty acids in there in the first place and keep them happy.
Of all those things, which ones are permanent in your body and which ones are coming and going with the food?
Well, I like to think that it's those keystone species that are the permanent residents. It's that natural flora that you were born with, or born into, I should say. It's not so much that probiotic that you're taking every day. A lot of those bacteria, in my opinion, from what I've read, are just there for a short period of time and they get pushed out. Yeah. So we want to have a healthy gut microbiome. We want resilience and resistance, meaning, again, what if we have to go on that antibiotic for a sinus infection for a week or so? We probably have to do that at some point, or we might have to, or whatever the example might be. Or we go on vacation and we eat saturated fatty acids, we eat crappy processed food for a week. We want to make sure that we've built in enough buffer in our GI tract so we can overcome those things. That's kind of how I think of it. So diversity, that's key number 1 for me. I want to make sure I do have enough healthy flora, natural flora, but then they want to be resistant to changes in the environment, changes in my diet. But then they also want to be resilient, that if I do have to take a course of antibiotics, they're not going to get all wiped out completely. I've got enough reserve in there too. So just kind of to recap, functions of a healthy microbiome: stimulates the immune system. That's again, we don't want to overstimulate and we don't want to understimulate. Breaks down toxic food compounds. A lot of that can be done with the stomach acid and the gastrin secretion we talked about. Synthesizes vitamins and amino acids, so we've got to break down proteins. A lot of that should and can be done really with the microbiome, with the good bacteria in our GI tract. One thing about vitamins that I like to pick on is with the overuse of, well, and I can't say, I don't think we can say for certain which pesticide or herbicide contributed to this, but we used to have enough gut bacteria to produce vitamin K, which was helpful for, especially vitamin K2, to help with putting calcium into bone tissue. We sell a lot of K2 here. And I was always wondering why that was. Even when I was in pharmacy school, I wasn't the greatest of students, so I might have missed this lecture. But from what I can remember, we weren't really taught much about K2 in pharmacy school, but we're giving it to patients so that when they take vitamin D and all that calcium is then absorbed more efficiently through the body, that vitamin K2 can take that calcium and hand deliver it to bone tissue. Way back when, and again depends on our time frame here, but we had bacteria in our GI tract that would synthesize vitamin K2. So, but with, again, I'm going to say glyphosate, or pick your poison, herbicide, pesticide, something along the time here killed off enough of our bacteria that produced vitamin K2, because we ourselves don't produce vitamin K2. It's produced by the bacteria in our gut. So, but if we live in America, or anywhere where there's a lot of pesticides and herbicides, we've probably killed off enough of that bug. And I don't know the name of the bug, so I apologize, but there's a particular one out there that produces K2 that we just don't have enough of.
You should take K2.
I recommend it to pretty much everybody. Yeah. And then ferments fibers into short-chain fatty acids, which have, again, many beneficial effects in the body, and then also short-chain fatty acids down-regulate inflammation as well. So going back to like fibers, how does diet influence the microbiome? I always say, we're going to talk about products here in just a minute, but diet is the number one thing I want people to take home tonight, is that just like I was talking about Band-Aids earlier, don't think of probiotics and prebiotics as just like, oh, I'm just going to use that and continue to eat my crappy diet. I don't want that to be the take-home point. I really want you to fix the diet. Again, that's I think the most important thing here. These are some just general recommendations. I mean, we could spend all day talking about what we should or shouldn't be eating, but just in general, whole food based. So again, if man-made it, don't eat it is my recommendation on that. If you have to open up a wrapper to get into it, think twice about it. Low glycemic, so if you're looking at starches, you want something that's got more fiber in it. It's gonna those carbohydrates are going to have a slower time getting into the bloodstream, which is going to have less of an impact on your blood sugar level. You want to be rich in fiber and resistant starches, low in sugar. We talked about that. You want a lot of mono and polyunsaturated fats. So like the picture, you want the avocados, the omega-3s, the omega-6s, that type of thing. Not too much of the 6s. We tend to get too much of that. So not your vegetable-based oils, but your olive oil. Low in saturated fat and animal fat, full of lean plant protein and animal protein. Like, I'm a big fan for chicken. Not that I'm against red meat, but we're going to from a gut-based diet, I want to try to minimize red meat. Or if we're going to have red meat, I always say there's a whole book on it. It's not the cow, it's how. It's how was it raised, what was it fed? Is it grass-fed, grass-finished? Because we know that if you feed a cow a normal diet, a grass, pasture-raised, that beef is going to have more omega-3s in it than 6s, and it's going to be less inflammatory to us. So it's important what we're eating, but it's also important if we're eating animal products, what did that animal eat, right? We want to take that full circle. And then it should be flexible, diverse, customizable, and I should also add on here like economical, like how many of us are eating organic, regenerative food? Like, I can't even tell you the last time I ate something that was labeled regeneratively grown, where you're putting nutrients back into the soil. Unless you're doing your own gardening and farming at home, that's awesome. And you're putting nutrients and you're doing cover crops and all that kind of stuff to put nutrients back into the soil. That's important. But so we
the diet. Does there exist any list of things that are good for you and not good for you? Because like one example could be spinach, where one says, yeah, this is great, and then the other one says, no, it has too many oxalates. And
yeah, there's not
like
there's not one set diet for that. Yeah, I would say it's individualized, but yeah, spinach is good. The cruciferous vegetables feed a certain bacteria. It's going to come down to a patient by patient basis. But yeah. So somebody asked about testing the microbiome. So here it is. So can we test for it? Yes, we can. So I said the typical healthy gut contains 85% good bacteria. There are some bad players in there. You're going to see my results in just a minute. I've got plenty of them to go around. If you want some, let me know. Only 10% of microbial strains are shared among healthy individuals. I said that before, but that is interesting. There are some key creatures, bacteria, fungus, that are good guys that are really controlling the majority of this party that's going on. $129. This is kind of gross, but we're here talking about the gut tonight. It's a poop test. So there's a little swab in here. You send it out. It takes a long time to get this back, though. I'm probably thinking 6 to 8 weeks, if I can remember right. I did mine back in August of 21. But if you're interested so it's like, do you have dysbiosis, right? Well, that's kind of the question. How do you know if you've got bad bugs floating around? Here you go. Do the poop test and it'll tell you. Yeah. And then redo it though. Like after I told Monica I started, we're going to get to the spore-based probiotic in just a minute too. I'm doing the treatment protocol that I'll be talking about tonight, or actually a modified version of it. But I'm going to redo that test to make sure that my bugs are back in line. So,
Where do you buy that?
You can buy here, right here. Yep. Well, we can. If you want to buy a kit tonight, that's fine. Otherwise, you can call tomorrow, ship it to your house. It's super easy to do. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of companies out there that are doing different tests out there. I don't know if there's anything cheaper than $129. I know I was just Googling it yesterday online, and I saw 200, 300, 500. There's all kinds of GI tests out there. This is just the one that we like. We're a big fan of Standard Process here. Again, organic farming. They're a local company here in Wisconsin. So
that's a strange thing because Standard Process is a farm, but producing products.
Yep, Whole Food.
Somehow.
They partnered with Dr. Ganyum, who wrote this book that runs this lab. Yep. So.
Great company, by the way, very local here by
Palmyra.
Freeway.
Yeah. So it's not the microbes. I already said this, but again, worth mentioning. It's rather the compounds and signaling molecules that these bugs are producing, like the short-chain fatty acids, that really make the difference. So here, let's look at this a little bit. It breaks down to microbiome diversity, phyla balance, which is like just different categories, phyla groups, beneficial bacteria, and then pathogenic bugs. And so you're trying to get a 10 out of 10. I got a 3, so I definitely failed. I was thinking I'd get a 7 at least. Yeah, I was way far away from that.
That test shows that stuff.
Yep. So, what's it?
I was copying what you on the 4 things that you had.
Diversity, yep, phyla balance, beneficial species, and then pathogenic. Yep. So I pretty much failed on all of this. The only thing that I was okay on is I didn't have a lot of pathogenic bacteria, but I actually had some. We'll look at that. I don't know if I cleared that up, but so This is the top 10. There's more than 10, but I'm just going to tell you 10 diseases linked to dysbiosis. Heart disease, some of these things I'm sure we know, but some of these things on here might not be so obvious. Cancer, respiratory diseases, accidents, strokes. I mean, accidents can be related to bad bugs in your GI tract. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Yeah, I know. Stroke. Some of these things are like inflammation, right? Alzheimer's. There's a whole book written by Dr. Emmerin Mayer. If you guys have seen this one, he has another book, The Gut-Brain Connection, where the link between bad bugs in their GI tract and how it relates to Alzheimer's, dementia, depression. That's a huge one. Diabetes, how you can mismanage carbohydrates and sugars. You have two people that are eating the exact same diet. And let's just make up a test right now, but you have identical twins, let's say, and you feed them the exact same diet, but you give one of the twins a 3-week course of an antibiotic. You can basically make that one twin develop diabetes because of the poor GI tract, even though they're both eating the same calories in the same diet. That's kind of, scary. Your immune system is certainly compromised when you've got bad bugs floating around. Kidney disease, suicide, so all kinds of things that again, some might be obvious, some not. These are my results. This is, again, I did okay. The only thing I really scored poor on is the E. coli. I kind of chalked that up to I probably don't wash my vegetables as well as I should. So I started washing vegetables before I eat them. That's probably
Then you might wash them in Brookfield's crappy water.
That's right. So that's what I do now is I take and we have an RO system at our house. So I rinse them with the RO water, and then I soak them with the RO water with some apple cider vinegar.
Wow.
And then rinse them off with more RO water.
You're good.
I know. I'm trying, that was, and that was my good test, right? I'm going to skip over that. We kind of hit on that already. Well, actually, let me talk about that. So why does dysbiosis develop? I talk about antibiotics. That can wipe out your good bugs, and then your bad bugs get to flourish. Stress, we talked about that. Toxic chemicals, medications. I could spend all day talking about that. But if you take NSAIDs, I remember working at the retail pharmacy where we're just dishing out 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, like 900 of them, or not 900 of them, 90 of them, so they're taking one TID. Every month, this patient would come in and get 90 tablets of 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, and I don't even know what we were treating. I think the doctor, arthritis or something. I'm like, oh my God. Antacids, I have a whole talk on that. I hate antacids. If you start messing up with your pH, let's say you have acid reflux. All right, so then you're going to neutralize your stomach acid. All right, so now you've just alkalized your stomach, which should be acidic. Now you're taking all of that acidic food and pushing you're pushing what should be acidic, it's now alkalized because you don't have any stomach acid, into your small intestines. The problem with that is when that transfers from your stomach to your intestines, there's a pH dependency there, because the bacteria that are in your small intestine, they thrive in a certain pH, and you've just screwed that up. Now you've screwed up your small intestines because the pH is off because you've taken an antacid because of your heartburn. But then it gets worse because now the pH of bacteria that live in your large intestine, they actually require a slightly acidic pH, but you've set up the pH train on the wrong track, and so now you have alkalized digested food going into your large intestine, and that kills off certain bacteria that should be producing short-chain fatty acids to help heal the epithelial cells in your large intestine.
So what do you take for heartburn?
We'll talk about that next week. I have a whole video on that. So, yeah. One thing you could do is apple cider vinegar. Antibiotics, we touched on that. Food additives, we touched on emulsifiers, dyes, preservatives, try to eliminate as much of that as you can. Food allergies, we'll talk about that in a minute. And then diets low in fiber. So again, that ketogenic Atkins diet, not that it's bad. I'm still in favor of a ketogenic diet, but we have to do it responsibly and eat a lot of fiber and a lot of different types of fiber. I'm going to skip this slide. So here's kind of the depiction of the healthy GI tract where the epithelial cells and the mucus layer is on the left-hand side here is everything's working nice and fine. And there's these, it's not really well depicted here, but in between those cells we've got little proteins called zonulin and occludin. It's kind of like the mortar between bricks that keep these epithelial cells all nice and tight and clean. What ends up happening, again, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but we're going to talk about LPS in just a minute. For some reason, let's just say you've taken an antibiotic and it broke down the mucus layer and it started breaking up these cells. Now all the endotoxin that's really should be contained in your intestines now leaks into your bloodstream. And then you get this endotoxin release, which then causes a whole cascade of inflammation going on. And that inflammation could really, in my mind, end up wherever the weakest link is in your physiology. So in me, it's acid reflux. I've suffered with acid reflux since 2002. So that's kind of my weak point, is that LES, that juncture in my GI tract, it just sucks. I still get acid reflux. But for somebody else, it might be asthma. That inflammation might end up in the circulatory of their lungs, or it could be the circulatory system of their heart, or wherever, or their carotid artery. I mean, this inflammation just doesn't stay in the bloodstream right on the other side of the GI tract. It could really go anywhere. Or it could tick off the immune system, and then you've got an autoimmune disease created. So really, this inflammation doesn't discriminate. It just wants to find a weak point in your physiology and exploit it. That's kind of how I think of that. So, so here is kind of just a blown up segment of that previous picture. So you've got, let's say you've got leaky gut, and we'll talk about how we test that in a minute. But think of LPS. It stands for, well, yeah, I never look at my slides. Lipopolysaccharide. It's endotoxin. It's produced by bad bacteria. And so once you get this situation created, it's almost too late. What do? I mean, the train's left the station. And so again, many of these bacteria are pathogenic in the GI tract, and they produce this LPS, and usually the body can just clear it and get rid of it. But once you have a crack in the foundation, LPS is going to start to seep through. You can actually test. Your body will try to clean up endotoxin. It'll produce antibodies. So if you want to know if you have LPS in your bloodstream, there's a few companies out there that are actually testing for that. We don't do that test here, but if it's something that you're going through all the protocols and you're still not figuring things out, you can actually see how much LPS might be in your bloodstream, because you don't want any. But again, it triggers a vast number of inflammatory cytokines, can create direct epithelial damage, and so it can kind of self-perpetuate too. Once this LPS gets through the GI tract lining, it can actually create more damage kind of from the inside out and killing more or breaking down more of these epithelial cells. And it can cross the blood-brain barrier, which gets into that Alzheimer's, dementia. That's where you can get into suicide, the accident thing. LPS, endotoxin, is just not a good guy at all. We never ever want that in our bloodstream, in my opinion. It shouldn't be there. And all that could be created from stress, overuse of antibiotics, a really poor diet. The list goes on and on. Systemic LPS can be linked. This is just a handful I put on here, but thyroid, joint issues, heart issues, immune, liver, brain, lungs, like any system. In my mind, it's any weak point in our physiology, LPS can go and attack it. So I just put a short list of them here too, but brain inflammation, depression, brain fog, fatigue, atherosclerosis, congestive heart failure, endometriosis, metabolic syndrome, obesity, diabetes, and I mean, again, the list goes on and on and on and on. We really want to make sure if we have leaky gut, if it was me, if I actually tested for leaky gut, I'd ask my doctor to actually find the test that you can actually test for the antibody for LPS. Because they really know that you got to do something about it. And how many doctors where their patient is obese or they have any of these conditions are really even testing for this. I don't know of anyone. Yeah. So this is proteobacteria. These are the bad guys, and this is actually my result. So if you see this, I am way over here at 64%, where I should actually, the ideal range for proteobacterium is less than 9.7%. So this was 2 years ago. So I've got a ton of these bad guys producing LPS, a bunch of them. I don't know, I haven't done the antibody test to see if I have it in my blood yet, but I could guarantee I've got it. Since I've got 60%, 64% of these bad bugs, I'm definitely producing a lot of LPS, a lot of it. LPS in an immune signal. So what does LPS do? It attaches to these immune cells that are, again, on the inside and on the bloodstream side of our body, and then it just creates this whole cascade of inflammatory molecules. So you can, instead of, if your doctor won't test maybe he or she doesn't have the capability of testing for the LPS, have them look at other inflammatory markers downstream. It's an indirect way, but it still gives you some clue if you've got inflammation going on that might be related to gut permeability, to leaky gut. So TNF alpha, NF kappa beta, interleukin 6 and 8. And I will say, like, a lot of these inflammatory molecules can be increased due to other issues too. So it's not, again, it's not specific, but at least can give you some insight. Again, high levels can lead to low levels, or like here you go, Treg cells. When we get into T cells and B cells, you've got this kind of teeter-totter of cells that are trying to distinguish our own tissue from a pathogen. And so you can look at Treg cells versus Th17 cells and see, do you have enough regulatory cells that are distinguishing your own cells from pathogens, or do you have a bunch of Th17 lymphocytes that it's just like game on and I'm going to just destroy anything and everything in my body. So more things to possibly test for. So there are ways to just lower LPS, and so here they are. So again, going back to those saturated fats, try to limit, or even I would say eliminate saturated fat. And I'm not saying all saturated fat is bad, but if we've got LPS in our blood, let's try to minimize that. Avoid alcohol or limit that. Definitely get rid of NSAIDs. So always think of like, oh, I've got a migraine, a headache, I've got joint aches and pains. Your NSAIDs, it might temporarily make you feel better, but ultimately it's perpetuating the problem. So we've got to figure out a different way to reduce inflammation besides taking NSAIDs, because they're really wrecking our GI tract.
And that's
like ibuprofen. Tylenol's fine, but like ibuprofen, Aleve, Advil's ibuprofen, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
Could LPS cause like stones, like a blockage in your gallbladder, liver, something like that?
No, it can just cause liver damage. No, it wouldn't be stones though.
Can Candida cause a stone, or is it always just calcium?
No, I haven't heard of Candida being that issue. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
maybe save my favorite alcohol, red wine. It's one of those where
I'll give you that.
half
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
say that it's the greatest thing for you, and half people say it's the worst thing for you.
It's the alcohol itself is the problem. Everything else could be problematic. But again, if you have 1 or 2 drinks a week, not the end of the world. Yeah. Yeah. Secretory Ig or immune globulin A, so which helps to bind up lipopolysaccharides. So it kind of works. You can increase your IgA by glutathione, omega-3 fatty acids. There's all kinds of building blocks for IgA. Cow colostrum is another great one that we sell. But all of that can help mop up this LPS if it does get into your blood, or even it can just mop it up and clean it out of your GI tract. So that's probably what saved me. I am a big fish oil fan. I take a lot of actually glutamate. I do that for my acid reflux. That's probably what's been saving me from having the LPS infiltrate into my bloodstream.
Question there.
Oh, yep. Oh, yep.
Glutamate is in the fish oil?
No, glutamate is just an amino acid that is in one of my acid reflux products. Yep.
Fish oil, great discussion, as in half the people say don't take any
Fish oil.
tablets, only take real fish.
In an ideal set, ideally, yes. I would favor omega-3 fatty acids from fresh fish. But from a practicality standpoint, I would at least, if you're going to do the supplement of fish oil, my argument is that it's better than nothing. It might not be as best as eating fresh fish every day, but then yeah, you want to make sure the fish oil is clean. There's no all the contaminants. It's not rancid. All of those kind of things. Yeah. Increase mucin production. There's a bunch of amino acids there, but we can help to build up that mucus layer by the epithelial cells by theanine, serine, L-proline, cysteine. These are all just amino acids. You can actually get amino acid blend powders if you want to start to supplement with amino acids. And then another way is, I'll get to this in a minute too, but modulating your microbiome. There's other bacteria that we could change in our GI tract that will help to lower the proteobacterium so that it pushes these bad guys down by allowing the good guys to flourish back up again. So, so lower LPS by lowering proteobacteria in the gut. So there's kind of two different ways I think of this. So if I've got a lot of gut inflammation, and again, maybe let's just say I'm not going to do the test per se. The doctor that I'm working with doesn't have access to the LPS test, blood test. You can do some of these things empirically and see how you respond from a symptomatic standpoint, in my opinion. So it says lower proteobacteria by lowering the pH of the large intestine through butyrate-producing probiotics. So you could take lactobacillus probiotic, just as that one strain, or bifidobacterium, and take that strain and see if that helps your symptoms. So you could do that. You kind of see the theme going on over and over here. Increasing fiber responsibly, slowly. Increasing polyphenols, so berries, apples, red apples, grapes, certain nuts, cabbage, spinach, broccoli, and then increasing prebiotics, so garlic, onions, asparagus, artichokes, beets, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. Interesting, my daughter, we'll get to this in a minute too, but we did a food sensitivity test on her. She's sensitive to pumpkin seeds, so that one would be out. Pumpkin seeds. A little more aggressively, you can actually go and attack the proteobacterium that are producing the LPS. I would only do that with a trained healthcare practitioner. I wouldn't just go out to your local health food store, hand them over this list of natural antimicrobials and say, hey, can I get these? Because if you kill off the proteobacteria, you can also kill off some of the good guys, and you just can create a whole other war that you really don't want. So you've got to do that very carefully. Sometimes you kill off one bad bug and another bad bug just replaces it.
In the CM core,
I know. And I've been taking that way too long, probably. I don't know. I've been taking that for 3 years, and I don't know if that was been part of my problem or not.
but it works safe.
It does. It keeps your blood sugar low. So berberine is a great antimicrobial, and I recommend it just about for everyone. Where is it? This guy right here. Berberine's been used for thousands of years. Chinese medicine just goes way back, and it was traditionally used as an antimicrobial to fight different pathogens. I historically have been using it in the last, say, 5 years from a more cardiovascular side of things, helping to lower cholesterol, helping to reduce inflammation, helping to improve insulin sensitivity. So all of these things are known with berberine, but yeah, there's kind of a double-edged sword with berberine.
So it sounds like it's okay in the beginning.
It's okay in the beginning, yeah. So you just gotta, again, be very careful. And It kills off the bacteria that produces the LPS. But if you don't, if my proteobacterium was normal, then I'd be like, take all the berberine I want, right? Potentially, I'm not, unless I, yeah.
If you take a decent probiotic and do berberine,
We'd have to do a study to figure that out, right?
Right.
I know. I know. I was thinking of that. I know. Like, oh, how can I, if you know the rules of the game, you can try to flip them till they work for your favor. Yep.
besides the berberine, what were the other three?
Where did I go? Neem, oregano, thyme. Yeah, neem oil, yeah. And again, I wouldn't do any of this direct killing unless you're working with someone that is well trained in the microbiome, because you want to know as many players as are set up in your GI tract, like basically do the poop test, see who the animals are in your GI tract, and then if you've got one that's out of whack, go after it responsibly with the right bullet, so to speak. So here's my phyla balance. This sucks. I don't have any balance in my categories of good bugs in my GI tract. So when you have so there's Firmicutes. It took me like a week just to say that, Firmicutes, or I can't even still say this one, Bacteroidetes. If I'm saying that even right, I don't know. Bacteroidetes. Long story short, and here's my proteobacterium that is way off the charts bad. If you have an increase of this guy, Firmicutes, so if I was over here on the red and my proteobacteria is still down here, I have an increased risk for obesity. As you can tell, I'm not terribly overweight. But then if these two guys get flipped around and I've got more of the Bacteroidetes over Firmicutes, I have an increased risk of irritable bowel syndrome or irritable bowel disease. Potentially, the risk is there, or the risk is increased. I don't have very much of either one, so I don't know where that puts me, other than I got to get that. I do want to get that back into the happy range, and I'm sure my proteobacteria in my GI tract is just crowding out the party, and they're just all over the place, having a grand old time producing LPS. When these guys, when they're balanced right, everything's happy, inflammation's low, but that's clearly not what's going on in my GI tract, or at least it wasn't 2 years ago. So that was a lot. What time? Anyone have the time? 7:43. I'm on 43, slide 43 of 75. All right. I know. All right, I'm going to go through this a little quicker. Food allergy definition. So the thing that, the test kit that we have here that I actually sold out of, I was trying to get some more kits tonight, but they're not here yet. They should be in tomorrow, is we test food sensitivities here now. So that's where my daughter did. She had migraines and constipation. We did the food sensitivity test, found out she was sensitive to pumpkin seeds, egg whites. I don't think gluten was on there. There was a couple of other things, but once we identified them and she eliminated them from her diet, her constipation went away and her migraines went away. So how about that? So just by some very subtle things here. Red pepper, or red chili peppers was the other one. So we're really, what we test here now is food sensitivity, because food sensitivities could lead into, this is my test, this is what the report looks like. You get categories of 1 through 4, and if you have reactions to levels 3 and 4, you should eliminate those pretty much indefinitely. Your 1s and 2s, eliminate them for 6 weeks, and then you can bring one back in slowly at a time. But should you even do, we call it the FIT test, food intolerance test. And so if you struggling to lose weight, what did I put on here? Migraines, that was my daughter. Thyroid issues, or the Hashimoto's, arthritis, brain fog, anything that has to do with inflammation, I would do a food inflammatory test to see if you are, and again, some of these things are very subtle. We're not talking food allergies where you got an, eat peanuts and then you stop breathing kind of a thing. This is very subtle stuff that we're talking about.
Is this
But-
different than your food sensitivity test?
No, that's
Same thing.
same thing.
Oh,
Yep, sorry. Or skin issues, psoriasis, even seasonal allergies, you might be sensitive to a food that's causing those allergies. But how do you know? So I'm going to skip.
Do you have to eat all those foods to figure it out?
No, you don't. So they do a test where you don't have, like I tested on duck. I've never eaten. I was a 2 on duck, but if you have a sensitivity to that protein, this test will actually not only measure an IgG level, but it'll measure something called immune complex, where it's the antigen and antibody connection. There's another molecule that's created, and that FIT test tests for that immune complex. So you don't have to eat it and then go do the test kind of a thing. You just do the blood test and it'll show up whether you've eaten it or not. So like, all right, I tested on apricots. I was a 3 or 4 on apricots and arugula. Carrots was another one that I tested on at a 3. So, but this is different than most other food sensitivity tests that are out there. It does this, I'm not going to get into this, but it does this dual pathway measurement. That's what that talks about. It tests 176 foods. This test isn't cheap. It's $475. Yeah. What I would recommend, in the basis of this talk, they do, let me get to, that's more of my report. That's my results. They give you a meal plan. They give you a mobile app. I'll skip through that. Is this guy right here. For $200, you can do a gut barrier panel. So going all the way back to some of those earlier slides, between those cells, the epithelial cells, they've got 2 proteins, zonulin and occludin. Those need to be in between those epithelial cells. If they're not, they're in your blood, and this test will pick them up. They have 2 different ways to test for it. So whether you test positive on, I'm not going to get into this, but the IgG or the IgA 1 and 2, doesn't matter. If it's positive on, it's there. You've got leaky gut. It's black and white. And so if you do the food sensitivity test, and I'm not going to get too much into the details here, but they do 132 foods for $375. They include the gut barrier panel. So if you just are curious, I guess I'll say, or if you have subtleties when you're eating stuff and you have a symptom 3 days later and you think, oh yeah, I might be sensitive to gluten or wheat, or you can look at, we have a copy of the list of what they test. I would encourage you just to do the whole test because the gut barrier panel is included in that food sensitivity. And then the other thing they test for is Candida. So we all have Candida in our GI tract, whether we know it or not or like it or not. But it should not be in your blood. So this gut barrier panel test is a finger stick. It'll actually measure the Candida if it's in your bloodstream just by a finger stick. You do this kit right at home. It's super simple to do. And again, it's going to tell you if you've got any of these proteins or Candida floating around in your blood. It should be negative for all of them. I don't know whose panel this is. It's just an example, but I'll skip through that. I'm going to skip through that. Okay, so how do we fix a broken gut? So if we've did the gut barrier panel, we realized that we came back positive for either the Candida that's in our GI tract, the occludin or zonulin. I'm going to tell you, the test is very definitive that you've got a leaky gut syndrome or permeability issue going on. We should do something to tighten that up, either clean up the lifestyle, if we can do that, or there's a whole kit here that you can do as well too, which is a probiotic, a prebiotic, and then that blue layer, the gut mucin layer, the mucus layer. There's a product for that as well too. So this kind of goes through all that. So it's a 3-month program. It's 3 different products. There's a spore-based probiotic. So unlike, we've historically have sold like Florigen here. Now we sell a lot of the orthomolecular orthobiotic, which is a multi-strain probiotic. and after going through all the research with this, the issue with traditional, I'll call them traditional probiotics or probiotics as I think we all generally know of them as, those probiotics, a lot of that bacteria just does not reach the small and large intestine like it should. I mean, that's why we always talk about billions of CFUs, like the higher the count, basically it's a numbers game. We're just trying to flood the GI tract with as many of these good bacteria, so at least one of them makes it down and can flourish in the small or large intestine. But what we're learning about the GI tract is we really want a spore-based probiotic because it doesn't really matter so much about the numbers anymore. It's just those darn bugs are encapsulated in the spore, in this encapsulation molecule, we'll call it, that gets them past the acidity of the stomach and gets them into the small and large intestine where they need to flourish and grow. So that's a key thing there. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but they have studied the exact strains of these bacteria that are in this product. These are the beneficial guys that we want there, that are really, again, I would still argue that they're transient. They're really there to set up shop, to push out the bad guys so that your natural flora, that 10% of your microbiota can grow back up and flourish the way it needs to. So that's the Megaspore spore-based probiotic. Again, think of it as an encapsulation. It doesn't have to be refrigerated. It's shelf stable. And yeah, there's 12 published studies that have been completed on Megaspore alone. So I do get questioned quite a bit from even providers, patients, and rightly so. Like, I still live in the camp of functional-based medicine, but also evidence-based medicine. Like, if somebody comes in and says, well, how do you know your probiotic works? Well, there's a study done on it. Okay, now you've got my attention. You know, this company came in and said, here, we've got a spore-based probiotic, and it's been proven over and over again from different universities in the U.S. that this probiotic has helped with obesity, it's helped with COVID, it's helped with this, it's helped with that. So if you're kind of a nerd like me and you want all of these studies, I am more than happy to get them to you. I've got them on a thumb drive. I can email them to you in 2 seconds. I mean, you can just page through the data. Are all the studies perfect? No. I don't think there's any clinical study out there that's perfect, but it's doing a way better job than just throwing together a probiotic. And
Orajel is one of the good ones.
I don't want to say it's bad, but I would argue this is way better for what we're talking about tonight. Yeah.
When is the best time to take it?
Oh.
Empty stomach, full stomach?
Half full, 3/4, yeah. I knew that question was going to come up tonight. I don't have a strong opinion on that, especially with a spore-based probiotic. If we're talking regular probiotic, 2 hours after a meal or right before you go to bed. Because I want your stomach to be as alkaline as possible when you take your regular probiotic, because it's a numbers game, right? If I just ate a meal, my pH dropped, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but your pH gets very acidic in your stomach when you eat a meal, and it should, unless you're on a PPI. And then you're going to kill off a lot of the bacteria in that probiotic. Now, some of the manufacturers argue with me on that, well, the strains of the bacteria that are in our probiotic are resistant to the stomach acid and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm sure they are to a point, but nothing like a spore-based probiotic. Yeah. So, yep. So this one doesn't really matter to me, but I would still argue best case scenario at night right before you go to bed. And you haven't eaten, I don't think I said this tonight yet, but don't eat, you should stop eating at least 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. Okay, we're all on the same page with that. Otherwise, your rest and repair process at night it's not going to be there. It's going to suck.
Do you sell that one?
We do. Although I don't have it tonight, but yes. Here's some of the studies that are on it. Again, this is all going to be on YouTube and online, so you could pause this and look at it as much as you want. Or again, you can email me, and I can send you the whole list of all the studies. And this is more of that. But this is where it's talking about just the spore-based probiotic that's in that bottle I just showed you, helping to reduce that endotoxin, helping to decrease those inflammatory markers, the TNF-alpha, the IL-6, the IL-8, helping to reduce inflammation, but also helping to reduce that LPS, that endotoxin. So I was pretty impressed when I read through all of this. some of this is, some of these things aren't, they're not all human-based studies. Some of them it's gut models, mice. It's not perfect, so just throw that out there. So that's the probiotic. This is the prebiotic. This is all the fuel. Again, should we be getting all of our prebiotics from different fibers and different foods? Of course. But if we want to cheat and take the quick path to success, here we go. This is it. Take this prebiotic. It's going to feed all the good bacteria and keep them happy. So, basically, it's got this oligosaccharide, which increases microbial diversity and selectively feeds beneficial bacteria. So this is what's in mother's milk. So you got your first dose with, well, if you were breastfed on day 1, hour 1, minute 1, you got your first dose of that through mom's milk. And that's why mom's milk is super, super important. I don't know if they have that prebiotic in baby formula or not, but they should.
Can you add it to the baby formula?
I think, I don't know. That's a good question.
When you do have those two, what
Yep.
are the cost of those?
Yeah, I don't know. That's how new this stuff is to me. I'm not sure. I know the whole kit, like if you just buy the whole package, this is $300. It's not cheap, but yeah. But it comes with, yeah, the spore-based probiotic, the prebiotic, and the mucosal agent rebuilder.
That's enough for the 3 months.
Yep. Yeah. And you do want to do it in order. You want to, when you get, well, I think I have another picture on it. This is the megamucosa, which is basically a bunch of immune globulins that are going to help build up that mucus layer in your GI tract. It's got a bunch of those amino acids I talked about earlier, about cleaning up LPS and that type of thing, and just rebuilding the mucus layer. So that's the third part of it. This is again more studies at helping with ulcerative colitis. This was in a rat model with their product. This is just more of the same. Yeah, reinforce, rebuild, restore. And this, they give you the whole protocol. And again, not that this can't be modified, obviously from patient to patient, but they do set it up pretty nicely for you. You do want to do it in order as well too. I would say there's a few exceptions to that, but I would do that just on a case-by-case basis. So, in summary, as we know, the GI tract, hopefully you've taken this, it's more than just digesting your food, right? It's part of the immune system, affects the brain, affects just pretty every organ system in our body. So it goes way beyond digestion. The microbiome is, again, a diverse ecosystem. But again, we think we know 10% of those bugs in there are keystone creatures, but how do we know that one bug way off into the corner isn't controlling the whole show? Like, we don't know yet. Healthy microbiome is diverse. Low levels of pathogens and inflammation, or with low levels of pathogens and low levels of inflammation. Eating a healthy diet, maintaining low levels of stress, using a targeted supplementation system can help support and maintain a healthy microbiome. Going back to that first slide, the other important thing, there's a whole couple of studies I read on glyphosate and Roundup and these pesticides and herbicides, is we could be eating really healthy food and thinking we're doing all the right things when, and there's a whole comparison to this, but if we're eating vegetables that seem to be healthy, they look healthy, they look fresh, and we're eating them, but they might be nutrient deficient, and they might have, there's this whole microbiome in the soil as well that we are, in my opinion, continually killing off with the way our farming system is set up, especially in the US, and I would argue in most parts of the world too by now. And so we've got to start taking better care of the soil, stop spraying Roundup on everything, and I think we'd be a lot better off health-wise. So going back to that landfill that I live next to, and I have no idea what's seeping into the water in Germantown, Menominee Falls, north end of Milwaukee County. Yeah, kind of scary, right? What's going on with the microbiome of the soil. All right, that's all my contact information. I will leave that up. If you do want to purchase a kit I was talking to Monica about this. We always try to throw in a little incentive. So if you want to do so this kit is 129 bucks. The one that I don't have that should be here tomorrow is the gut barrier panel kit for 200 bucks. It's all actually that same kit depends on what you buy. Also, it has the the food sensitivity test in it as well. Depends on what box you basically check. But that kit will be here tomorrow. The gut barrier is $200, and then again the full panel with the food sensitivity is $475. We're throwing in basically a free hour of my time if you buy either one of those kits by the end of next week. So I don't like to pressure anyone, so it's my shameless plug. But if you want to get one of those kits, see if you've got, or anyone, it could be for anyone that's hearing this or that you share this with, doesn't it, someone that
So
attended.
are you talking about the $200 kit and the 4?
Either one, yep. So then, because when these results come back, there's a lot of personalization and customization that we could do and help you figure it out. So we sit down together and do just that. Figure out if there's medications that you're on that are screwing things up, whatever it is, and then modify the program to fit your needs. Because if you're on medication,
What did you say that kit was?
this one here, $300.
And that includes what?
It includes the spore-based probiotic for a month, and then a month of the prebiotic, and then a month of the mucosal barrier, whatever, I don't even know the name of it, regenerator, we'll call it.
So it's only a month's supply?
Of each. So it's a 3-month total program. Because you do each product is taken by itself in a stepwise fashion.
But you shouldn't need that forever.
Correct.
You're
It's
healing.
you're healing, right? Yes, that is, yeah. Now, if you're going to cheat on your diet and play the games that I play, then you're probably going to want to, yeah, do a maybe sprinkle in some probiotic every now and then and some gut mucosal rebuilder. Yeah.
Is this only for adults or can children take it too?
Ooh, that's a good. As far as I know, adults only.
Okay.
Whether you buy it and give it to your kid, that's, yeah, I can't endorse that, but
Okay.
yeah, I could say on a personal level, I'd give it to my kids. I would adjust the dosing, of course, but I could certainly work with you on that.
For sure.
But yeah,
I
yeah.
see a digestive
Yep.
doctor, I don't know what the true name is.
Gastroenterologist.
Yeah,
Yep.
and she said she just knows I have bad bacteria in the small
Small intestine.
Never tested for it, but she knows it. And she gave me an antibiotic for that.
Yeah. Well, there's like rifaximin, and there are certain antibiotics, right, that can kill off the bad bugs in your small intestine, like rifaximin is one of them. So
It was real expensive.
yeah, and then, yeah, that one's is super expensive. So if somebody, yeah, if she basically diagnosed you with SIBO, basically overgrowth of bad bacteria in your small intestine, you can, again, with a well-trained physician, use an antibiotic safely to target the bad bug, and get rid of that so that your GI tract will be rebalanced properly.
Didn't do any good.
Dang it. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's important to know what bugs were, how many of the good bugs do you have? How many of the bad ones do you have? All that kind of stuff. So you can kind of make a better informed decision. That is this guy. Yep.
That tells you the bugs.
Yep.
So the 475 one is.
That's the food sensitivity, 176 foods, and it also includes the gut barrier panel, which is the occludin, zonulin, and then Candida. Yep.
Can I get the gut barrier test separate?
Yes.
I want to?
Yep. You can just get the gut barrier.
Okay.
It's $200
As a blood test.
as a blood test. Yeah. Well, and it's a finger stick.
Finger stick.
Yep. Yep. So you do that kit right at home. You basically buy it here. It comes in. I think it should be here tomorrow, honestly. But I just found out today that UPS is like going on strike or something. Did anyone else hear that? I don't know. A lot of our orders are being held up, so I don't know if it will be here tomorrow, but I would call, don't just chase down here. But that
Well,
kit
they are slow in
should be here tomorrow.
delivery lately.
So yeah, that might be part of it.
Food sensitivities, finger stick as well?
Yep,
Oh, they're all.
they're all, yep, yeah, like
That kit you have now,
this one we have now,
the total,
the bug testing one, we'll call it, yeah.
no, I meant that.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
No, I don't have this either. But if you wanted to pre-order it, whatever you want, yeah, then you could do that.
So you're the one up there, the poop one?
Yep,
So does that, when we get results, who do we talk to that about?
this guy. Yeah, because we get into there's more bugs on that report. I touched on like just the 3 kind of main
Is that
characters.
the free consultation with you for that hour? Or-
Yeah, yeah.
If you have been diagnosed with IBS and you're starting at square one, what would you recommend?
Yeah.
Success?
Yeah, because that's going to dictate, then I don't have to guess at what your treatment's going to be. Exactly. Yep. That's a great question. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, like up until now, like I think a lot of practitioners have just been guessing, and like, let's just throw a big dose of probiotic on you and see what sticks.
Well, it seems like it's a catch-all.
Right?
They
Yeah.
don't really test for it, but because you're
Yeah.
having stomach problems, you got IBS.
Yeah, but like
They don't-
from what of the million different strains, which one's causing it? Yeah.
So if we take this supplement here.
Yep.
And been diagnosed with like leaky gut.
Yep.
And we behave on food,
Yep.
how long does it take for that to repair?
3 months.
3 months?
Yep.
And then after that?
I would say,
You
yeah.
kind of want to stay on those foods that are like better for you and stay away from the other ones?
That's right.
So you
I-
don't re-injure yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, I think the rules of the game are going to be a little bit different for everyone, and I like to bend the rules. I'm a rule bender. Now, I don't break them, but I bend them.
Recommend that test before you buy that kit.
Yes, I would not, because you could just waste $300. I mean, I'm not doing, when I did the gut barrier panel and I tested negative for everything. The only reason I'm doing a modified version of this kit is because of my poop test, which tells me I've got a lot of proteobacteria in my GI. I have 64% of those critters producing LPS.
And so then you take the that one.
No, don't take this one. I'm just taking an orthospore. I'm taking a spore-based probiotic.
Oh,
And
I
I'm
thought
cleaning
you
up,
said
and I'm,
about that.
well, this was for something different. Yeah, I'll put this back, yeah. That was for blood sugar and cholesterol. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay,
So,
one more question.
Yep.
Earlier in this presentation, you said, what would you do for stomach acid? And you said apple cider vinegar.
yes,
I was telling this lady, this is so interesting with the IBS. My husband was diagnosed with that, and he'd get these attacks where we'd be at a restaurant, right in the bathroom, and pain and whatnot. And I read an article, and it was a long time ago. It took me about 4 years to get him to do this. Apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon or 2, with a fully squeezed
lemon, yep.
and a little bit of honey, and we fill the short glass with water, drink it down. After about 3 years, he still, he took it every day for about 3 years now. Never has an attack, never. And the doctor said, that can't work. Well, okay.
I mean, how do you argue, yeah,
I mean-
how could you argue that?
I know.
Right,
So
It's horrible
try that.
tasting though.
yeah. I mean, I have drinking a lot of apple cider vinegar in my time. I'll use it for, and I'm not saying like everyone should go out and drink it, because if you're on a PPI and you're going to drink, well, you should dilute it, basically no matter what. That's kind of step number one. But you can cause yourself a lot of harm, because if you're drinking something acidic, but then you're taking a drug that's causing alkalinity, you're going in opposite directions, and you can burn the heck out of your esophagus real fast. And
Good salad dressing.
it does, yes, yeah.
Is this a certain kind of apple cider vinegar, or is it?
Bragg's.
With mother,
B-R-A-G-G.
Yeah.
Organic.
have to be drank
Right.
on an empty stomach?
Unfiltered,
Ooh.
raw,
So
raw, unfiltered.
this is, so my trick with that is, so when we eat food, when stomach acid doesn't get produced right away. So when our stomach lining stretches, then that gastrin hormone that we talked about way back when, that it gets released, and that sets up the stomach acid to be released into the stomach. So I usually recommend doing the apple cider vinegar like midway between your meal with the least amount of water as possible. Because you don't want to drink it with a full glass of water and then stretch out your stomach too much, because then you're going to start stretching out your LES, or the door between your stomach and esophagus. So, yeah, in the middle of a meal with the least amount of water.
Somebody told me once that anybody who's had their gallbladder removed does not have enough acid.
Well,
Gallbladder doesn't do anything, that's why.
yeah,
it's removed.
yeah, that God just put it in there. Just he had an extra piece, and so he
It's
just,
an accumulator in a pump.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk about gallbladders tonight, but I will say that if you have your gallbladder and they want to remove it, I would encourage you to come see me first. How about that? I've got a couple of tricks to keep it in.
How much
Major,
Oh, go.
major argument with half the world, smoothies. Everybody seems to be on smoothies.
You got to chew. You got to
Do
chew your
they-
food.
Do they reduce the amount of stomach acid that is produced then? And secondly, is the fiber in a smoothie doing the same as the fiber in the salad that you eat?
Yeah, I would argue it's not. I do a lot of smoothies, but I think of them as just getting some quick nutrients in my system. That's it. But you still got to eat a salad or vegetables or whatever your fiber is, and you got to chew it. Yeah. I think we overestimate chewing too, but we don't.
What about the gummy fibers?
Have you not learned anything tonight? No. No. We can't supplement our way out of a bad diet, right? Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. I think you were. Oh. I know.
I've been trying to ask.
I know. Yeah.
So I have a 14-year-old daughter who has suffered from migraines, suffered from various, skin things, starting with molluscum contagiosum at the age of 5, and then, the athlete's foot, eczema, a little bit of acne, but not bad. But now she's on all these, different medications,
Mm-hmm.
and just a number of things with the
Yep.
diarrhea, et cetera, and so the GI person said she has GERD and is doing the scope for her. I am so scared because this child has food sensitivities. Strawberries were one when she was young.
Mm-hmm.
All this candy with those crazy dyes.
Yep.
And so I'm just asking,
What would I do?
what would you do? I'm trying to gain ownership so that she doesn't get off track. I'm very worried about her, and she, was diagnosed with depression last year too. So it's just
Yep.
what do you do? It's I was
Right.
trying to address the GI with pre and probiotics, which was
Oh, yep.
my approach
Yep.
a year ago, which was
Right. So I think one of my slides kind of touched on this, is that we can't sit here and say that, using that as an example, that if we fix her gut, that all of that's going to go away. I would probably, from what you've told me though so far, I would argue that's probably a big piece of the puzzle, but there's probably other pieces in there too, right? And so, like with Lily, with my daughter, I would start with the food sensitivity. The $475. I mean, I'll be honest, me and Monica tried all kinds of, Monica's my wife, by the way, that's a pharmacist here. Okay, all right. Who's this Monica girl? We tried all kinds we did the probiotics, we did GlutatShield, we did stuff for migraines, Butterbur. We probably spent $200 on supplements that were thinking that natural to help her with her headaches and with going to the bathroom, and none of it worked. None of it. I mean, I guess the magnesium, the reactive magnesium helped a little bit with her constipation, but not like it should have. And so then we're like, yeah, we should food test her.
And so once that was found and then
Yep.
eliminating those foods,
Yep.
a lot of things cleared up.
Yes. And when she cheats, her symptoms come back. So we had our older daughter tested too. She has the skin issues big time, and she's a teenager. When she cheats on, and gluten was a 3 or 4 for her, when she cheats on gluten, her acne gets horrendous. And dairy.
And dairy, that's lactose
Yep.
intolerant.
It could be lactose or it could be casein, and that test will test for both.
Okay, great, and then that
Yep.
is, do you know, is that covered by insurance typically, or that's not?
It's, well, we don't bill any insurance here,
Yeah,
but you
okay.
could use HSA dollars or like a flex spend.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah,
so much.
yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily do this.
Yeah, because,
Yeah.
where I was losing you is when you were talking about the antacids and stuff and neutralizing the stomach, like I kind of got
Yeah.
lost on that, and it seems like that would be really important because she was on a Mazoprol like 3 or 4 months ago, and I tried to I said no to the doctor. Father countered, so I mean,
Yeah, that,
I don't know what to do.
yeah,
It didn't worsen.
oh, I don't want to get on my soapbox here, but I'm going to anyways. But the PPIs, the omeprazoles, there's so many out there, Nexium, so on and so forth. In my opinion, again, I'm not saying that they're bad all the time, right? But like if you have a bleeding ulcer, even if you look at the package insert from the FDA, those medications are only approved for, I'd have to go back and look, but it's something like 12 weeks max. Yeah. So like a bleeding ulcer, those are great. We don't want acid burning a bigger hole in our stomach. I get it. But for the patient that has the GERD or heartburn, whatever we want to put a name on it, indigestion, I think we're all under the impression that that patient is producing too much stomach acid and that's creeping up their esophagus. I would argue, of all the research I've looked at, that particular patient, there's only 10% of those patients are actually producing too much stomach acid, which would then warrant the drug. So, but the other 9 out of 10, they don't need to suppress their acid. If anything, I would argue they probably aren't producing enough. There's patients out there that are born that don't have those parietal cells that are producing the HCl. They just don't produce enough or any stomach acid.
Isn't that what omeprazole does, is stimulate?
It blocks. It blocks that parietal cell.
I thought it stimulates to produce more.
Oh, more cells, yeah. It'll block the first layer of acid pumps so well that your stomach will actually produce another layer of stomach acid pumps to try to overcome the ones that are blocked by the drug. Yeah.
And I'm sure you have a copy of that research.
Yes.
May I have that?
Yep. Because you're going to email me, because I'm not going to remember this, but you're going to email that. Email me to request that, and I will get that to you. Yep. I know it's a long email. It's like, how much more words do you want in an email address? But sorry. Yep.
Could I just ask you to please repeat what you said about the apple cider vinegar? Because I was.
So you want to, so you take it in between, so you take it right in the middle of your meal. So if you kind of, well, for me, I just laugh at this. Like, if you know how much you're going to eat, sometimes I have no idea. But like, if you kind of set out your plate, this is what you're going to eat half of it, and then you're doing 1 or 2 teaspoons in like 4 ounces of water, and you're going to drink that, and then finish the rest of your meal. That's the key. Yep. You don't want to get too much water because then you're going to expand your stomach too much, and then some of that might, come up.
So what's the lemon doing that you were talking about?
I don't know, that goes in acidic, but it metabolizes alkaline.
That's right. Yeah.
And it makes your body much more alkaline.
You want an
But,
alkaline.
we do it first thing in the morning, the lemon, the thing, and just
Yeah.
start your day and
Yep.
probably don't eat for a while.
I know, like you talked, I mean, have I taken apple cider vinegar on an empty stomach? I have, and done just fine with it. Like, I mean, yeah.
I do the lemon water on my stomach too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it means you're putting them.
I mean, some of these things I always tell patients too, it's like, it's not a one size fits all. You got to see what works for you.
And this is one time a day, right, the apple cider vinegar?
No, well, yes and no. I do, for some patients, I'll tell them to do it with every meal.
Okay,
And then like me personally, when I had really bad reflux, I would do a dose before I went to bed
okay.
to try to, again, if we know the rules of the game, that LES, that door is going to naturally, kind of going back to the nervous system working in the integration of the enteric nervous system and the vagal nerve, that door is going to flex open and close naturally by itself, kind of like all day, all night. And when we eat, it sends a signal to our brain to clamp down on that door because of the acidity. So if you don't have the acidity, the signal's never sent to your brain, which then sends it back down to the LES through the vagal nerve to close that door back down. So, yeah. But if you take the omeprazole, oh, my acid reflux went away. Well, but you're screwing up your whole digestive tract, in my opinion, in the long run. I mean, it's a short-term fix, and then physically our bodies get addicted, that's not the right word, dependent on those drugs because they're so good at blocking stomach acid. Like I said, then you'll get a second layer of parietal cells behind the first layer that are going to try to overcome, like if the pump is broke, the body is going to produce another pump. And there's that study I was referring to. They have a cross-sectional slide. They basically took someone's stomach and put it on a microscope, and they actually stained it, and you can see the parietal cells stacked up on top of each other trying to overcome the blockage of the one in front of it. And then when you cold turkey off of that drug, now instead of having one pump dump acid into your stomach, now you've got 3 or 4 or 5.
That is what's happening.
Yes. Yep. I had the same thing happen to me. I guess I should say.
And that can get repaired.
Yeah. I'm living proof.
So now,
When I behave on my diet.
if you take that spore antibiotic, do you need to take that
If you,
other one prebiotic?
I would argue if you know you've got leaky gut, like if you know, like how do you know that though, right? If you've done the test and you've got the blood test that shows you've got the zonulin in your blood, that means you've got leaky gut, then I would do the whole program. You could argue if you have very mild symptoms, and let's say you do the gut barrier panel and you're negative for anything, and you're like, oh great, now okay, now that sucks. That wasn't the problem, even though you thought it was. Do you still take the probiotic? Well, if you have a lot of proteobacteria, which again you might be guessing, then that's why I'm taking it, because I've got a lot of that bad bacteria in my GI tract.
So that's the test.
So then I would go back, so then you would come back and you'd be like, okay, so it's gut barrier panel is test number 1. If it shows up negative and you have symptoms, then I would say, okay, then let's do this test to actually see what bugs are floating around. You could just,
Do that one first.
this would be second. It'd be gut barrier panel first, and then this one second. If we haven't figured it out with the first test, then this would be the second one, based on what but yeah.
Can I just jump back to
Yeah.
the GERD discussion?
Yeah, yep.
Were you talking about like yourself having like a weak LES or?
Yes.
Oh, it is actually a physical.
Yes.
That's a physical thing.
That is.
You're a
structural issue.
Structural,
versus
yep.
The acid in your stomach.
Correct.
And you were able to
Fix that.
manage it successfully.
Yes. There was some painful days and weeks in there because I cold turkeyed off of twice a day Prevacid, in addition to it's a PPI, yeah, and I was doing ranitidine at the same time, another antacid. I was like, I'm a pharmacist. I know I'm going to just throw all the drugs that suppress acid. Oh, the things we learn, right? It's like, oh my gosh. The hard way. Yeah. Yeah. I know. So.
I don't get acid reflux, but, and it doesn't matter what I eat because one time it'll cause a stomach ache and the next time it won't.
So when you get into eating and you get acid reflux and then you let's say
I don't get acid reflux.
At all when you eat?
Very
No. Oh, okay. What I was going to say is sometimes you can't always trust, like, oh, I ate it this time, so it's okay with me. Like, I wouldn't trust that at all. I would do the food sensitivity test
Well, see,
to
I
really
get
see.
a stomach ache. Seems like no matter what I eat.
I mean, there's additives on that food sensitivity test. Thank you guys. That are just additives. There was one lady a couple months ago. She was sensitive to benzoic acid, which is like just about in everything, or red dye. Was it red dye number 5 or whatever number it is? Yeah. Where is that?
And I get a lot of bloating.
Yeah,
and
there's.
they can't find
Or
a
like,
reason for it.
or like aspartame. I mean, there's so MSG. There are so many little things in here that are in our food that
And that test for that?
the kit that I don't have. That'll
Right, no,
hope if UPS doesn't go on strike, we'll be here tomorrow.
How long does that food sensitivity test take to get the results back?
Like 3 weeks. Usually it's 2 weeks. I just got an email from the CEO a couple days ago, and they're like behind an extra week. So like I'd say 3 weeks. This one, it takes like, I don't know if I said that, this takes like 6 weeks to get back. It's kind of crazy the technology that we could do though to like
Oh, you send that
find the
out.
DNA of like which bug. It's just insane.
You
like
send that out to get the results.
You take it home and do the test, and then you send it in. And then I get the results, and then we talk about them. Yep.
So you mentioned.
Now, what helps with bloating?
That might be all in your blood work, right?
Yeah, that bloating, that's, oh boy. There's so many possibilities for that. It could be food sensitivity, it could be incomplete digestion, it could be that could be 10 different things. Ooh.
You mentioned GlutatShield before. What is that good for?
GlutatShield, I use GlutatShield for kind of like the mucus layer of the GI tract. I think of it as a soft tissue healer, and it really helps to produce re-establish that mucus layer in the GI tract. I kind of tell patients, I think of it as a natural Pepto-Bismol. It's a kind of a cheap way to, but we all understand like what Pepto-Bismol kind of does. It coats and soothes. There's aloe vera in the GlutatShield, which is the coating and soothing part. There's zinc. Zinc is like a natural glue that holds cells together. There's N-acetylglucosamine. So we know about like glucosamine for joint tissue, but if you acetylate glucosamine, it actually helps to build up that mucus layer.
Can that lead to constipation? Because some lipids.
They're slippery. Yeah, I've actually had patients complain more of diarrhea with it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So is that not good for a stomach ache then?
It's fine.
Depends on the patient. I would try it.
Okay.
Or if anyone has like, again, heartburn, indigestion, I would still try it. It's rare for someone to have a reaction to it.
Is this leaky gut program different than that leaky gut program?
Very much so. Mainly,
Because this has more
before, and that does not?
That's right. Yep.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
And they're similar in price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you going to leave more confused, or did I? Maybe I created more questions than answers.
A lot of stuff in there.
I know. This is just the tip of the iceberg, but
You know about glyphosate, actually, they've been actually spraying organic foods to help them dry quicker so you can get them out that last longer.
yeah.
So you get so-called organic foods, they've been sprayed with glyphosate.
Don't tell me that. Yeah, I know, right? Because organic, what by definition, it's not, the soil hasn't been treated with pesticides or herbicides for 3 years or 5 years.
Yeah, but they spray.
But it's okay to spray, yeah. Yeah.
They put this eye peel on things that's supposed to help them last longer, but it's toxic at the same time on organic foods.
Yeah.
Look for the eye peel label and they'll buy it.
Our vegetables look great at the store, right? The fresh produce, but how the heck are all the tomatoes perfectly red and shiny and the apples? And I'm just like, but I know. It's like, can we all just go back to farming, having our own garden?
That's about the best way to go.
I know, right?
You go through washing all of this
That's my dad.
But
first in water and then something else. And
well, when I'm at work, I do that. I have time, so I'll go back. I got 2 minutes. I'll go and start soaking my veggies. Like I got green beans at Cystic, not organic, but doing the best I can, right? So I got some green beans, and I did the soak thing with the apple cider vinegar, and then I rinsed them.
Did you put a lot of apple cider vinegar in your dish pan?
I just poured it. I just poured it in. I don't know. There is a recipe online. I'm sure you could find, but
seems like a lot of bother.
yeah, yeah. But I'm trying to get healthy.
Mince your vegetables.
Yeah, I've got a few autoimmune issues as well. So it's like, well, that's motivating me. And then knowing, knowing I failed my test. I haven't failed a test in a long time. Yeah, I know. Like, damn, it was a shit test, and I failed it. Oh, I didn't tell you. Speaking of crap, right? Oh, where did that test, or where did that slide? Gosh, I had a lot of slides today, didn't I? Yeah, LPS, little pieces of shit.
That's a good way to remember it.
Right? That's what they are. I mean, these little bastards, they get in and they jack up your whole system. They should be in your GI tract, but yet they're floating around in your blood. And they cause all. Which one? This one?
With the full name of LPS.
Oh, this
There
one.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah,
How do you
lipopoly.
know if you have an autoimmune disease? Or would that test?
Well, so depends on the auto, right? So there should be an antibody. There's a blood test that says you've got an antibody to a specific cell in your body. So like with Hashimoto's, you have the thyroid peroxidase enzyme, and so that gluten molecule looks like that same piece of cell on your thyroid, and so they can actually test the antibody. And
You
they,
have to go to the doctor for
yep,
that?
yep,
I have
that's the only way to do it.
And then they tell you it doesn't matter.
And then, well, yeah, or they say, I mean, like half the patients that walk through our door for thyroid medication, I ask them, what did your doctor test to get you to, or to have them prescribe the thyroid hormone in the first place? And it's usually just TSH. And then I encourage them to get one of our thyroid tests, which actually measure for antibodies. And then they come back and they're like, they've got the antibody. And then what I try to do is explain that you really, this is kind of far out there, but it makes sense. Like if you have antibodies to your thyroid tissue, you don't have an endocrine issue, you have an immune dysfunction. So it really has, yes, it's attacking an endocrine gland, but it's your immune system that's screwed up. So let's fix that.
So then
Not
you
just
get
take, yeah, but not, instead of just taking thyroid medicine to like, again, Band-Aid approach, let's just make your TSH look normal, but they've not done nothing to address your antibodies, your immune system attacking its own tissue. And you can kind of apply that same analogy, in my opinion, to like other like rheumatoid arthritis or whatever, you know, fill in the blank, autoimmune, Raynaud's, the list goes on. Oh, Hashimoto's, yeah. Yeah, we see a lot of that here, unfortunately. It attacks your thyroid gland. The Hashimoto's, it basically destroys the tissue. It breaks down your thyroid tissue. So then you don't, if you don't have the thyroid tissue functioning, then you don't produce enough thyroid hormone.
Right. That's why
And that's why they give you the pill to feel better, but it doesn't fix the problem. And then you're on thyroid medicine the rest of your life.
to fix the problem.
Fix your gut. You have to retrain your immune system to stop attacking its own self. I always think of autoimmune as like this is back in my day when we had you had the antivirus, like the disc came and you had the new definitions on the CD and you'd put it in and then it would tell your computer what was good and bad. We have to kind of do that with this kit to tell our immune system that that protein that was floating around isn't bad anymore. So we have to reprogram the immune system, and you can do that. It just takes time and discipline from a lifestyle diet standpoint. That's a real simple way I think of autoimmune. Not all antibodies are bad. I didn't say that, but like the TPO antibody, if it's like the normal range is like 0 to 40 or 60, whatever, depends on the lab. You want some antibodies because those antibodies are we know that all of our tissue and cells are regenerating, and some of those antibodies are there to clean up old cells as well. So you don't want to have 0 antibodies. You just don't want to have too much.
So which test would be good for thyroid regarding the gut?
I would just start, I didn't even talk about it tonight, but I would do a standard, I shouldn't call it standard. It's actually a comprehensive thyroid panel that actually measures the antibodies first. If they are elevated, then I would go and do the gut barrier panel. Because if I know that somebody has Hashimoto's and they have high antibodies, something's getting in through the gut line. And again, I gotta be careful. No, it wouldn't really be the poop test. It'd be the gut barrier test. It might tell us that, but it might not too, though. I'm sure there's enough, and I don't know the numbers on this, but I'm sure there's enough patients out there with Hashimoto's that don't have a leaky gut. But if that came back negative, I would want to know if they have a gluten sensitivity, because that's the number. Okay, yeah. So then something else might be triggering. If you're not doing any grains and there's no gluten involved, then I'd say, okay, something else is leaking through that's triggering that. Yeah, that's triggering your immune system to still produce those antibodies.
And how much is that one?
$200.
What's it's gluten and then it's glucine or something?
Gliadin. So there's gluten. The gluten protein is made up of 2 small branches called one's called gliadin and one's called gliadin.
Yeah, well, one of those 2 they put in the can of chickpeas. So you have to make sure that it's organic. So that's what my nurse friend just told me.
Yeah. So we continue to figure out more ways to screw stuff up around here.
So you have to rinse.
Rinse. Yeah.
I always rinse chickpeas.
Yeah.
Rinse them all. How much is your thyroid thing?
I want to say it's $250.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not cheap, but
Well, it's better than going to the doctor and them telling you, oh, you're fine.
Mhm.
I asked for my hormones to be checked. Oh, no, you're okay. And I, like every year, like when you should go
Yeah.
get your pap done, right?
Yep.
Oh, well, we wait for every 10 years now. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Find some random
Yeah.
person on the street.
Yeah,
Like,
I know,
there's
right?
something wrong.
Yeah.
What was her
It's
question?
terrible.
The thyroid, the thyroid test,
How much was it?
I think it's around $250. Yeah. So, but it gets you TSH, which everyone knows that one, but then it gets you T3 and T4, and, well, it doesn't do reverse T3, and then it does your antibodies.
See, my daughter takes Synthroid, and it isn't converting
Into T3.
T4 to T3, so she takes a T3 pill besides.
Which I would argue most patients aren't getting T3. A lot of patients that start here aren't getting, yeah. So that's at least good that she's getting T3. Not every patient needs T3. I mean, our bodies can make T3 on its own if everything is in line, but
Well,
how do we
mine
know
has
if,
the
yeah.
low end
Yeah.
of the scale, and he didn't even want to test it, because he said it's been consecutive all along when I was testing it. And it came back, yes, 2 point something, which is
The bottom end of
just
normal, yeah.
above.
2.2 typically is the low end, yeah, yeah. So,
So if I truly have leaky gut, then that could be also an answer to cholesterol issues. Heart.
maybe.
Maybe. I told you I wanted one pill.
I know.
All my nutrition
I know,
in it.
I know.
would just take that once a day.
I've
and
been-
I don't have to worry about anything else.
I've been asked to compound that, like, for the,
Can you swallow one of this?
yeah. We're gonna make it into a rectal suppository,
I don't want to.
yeah.
I
So,
don't want to worry about food anymore.
So I'm waiting for your question. You wanted to ask a question, I wanna know what it was.
Oh, you know what, this is, 35 or 6 years ago, I had, a lump over here, and I went to the doctor and they said, you have thyroid cancer, and it's like real metastasized. Okay, so they fixed that, but when they did all the tests, they said, wow, I felt great, I was thin, you have Hashimoto's. And I'm like, who knew? But he said, don't worry about it, because your thyroid's gone. It's gone.
yeah,
They can't attack it anymore.
we took it out, so what is it, right?
But if I still have the antibodies, and everybody's saying you should be gluten-free, and I'm not, but I'm fine, I don't know.
Do you know, that's a tough one. I could see it both ways. I would argue though, like,
I mean, if you still have the antibodies,
You're-
you should still be gluten-free.
I have a feeling like, right, so your immune system's got this like reserve of like programs, and so like at one point you had your thyroid, you had Hashimoto's, and so it's got these memory cells, and so you said you weren't gluten-free?
I'm still not.
Yeah, so your body is, right, so your body's making those antibodies because you're still eating gluten. I would argue if you eliminated all gluten out of your diet, not that this is going to improve your health, by the way, but just from an experimental standpoint, removed all your gluten. If you had leaky gut, seal it up, and then basically do that for 6 months. I would imagine maybe longer than that. Minimum 6 months, those antibodies would go close back to normal. Because you're not basically feeding it or programming it to keep producing those antibodies.
Did you ever hear of a blood test? A cardiologist gave this to me, something sedimentation rate,
Oh, the SED rate? Yeah.
and it's supposed to be between 0 and 30, and I was 1, and they said, shit, you have no inflammation. So I'm thinking, I can still eat gluten.
The issue with gluten, because everyone tries to cheat on it, and my daughter, as an example, with the acne, she eats it, boom, you know, and again, it's delayed. 3-4 days later, it's all over her face, and she like, this has been repeated time and time, and we try to tell her like, come on, and so gluten, even if those antibodies go away, like gluten still causes inflammation. It's still, there's something called toll-like receptors. It will still activate it. So I always try to tell patients, gluten, even though you don't react to it maybe severely, it's not doing you any good. Like, there's no benefit of gluten whatsoever in your body.
For anybody?
Anybody.
There is a benefit to that.
It tastes, or maybe it tastes good. There's one benefit. I'm not gluten-free, but I'm just saying. Yeah.
But, so when you can't just be limiting your gluten, you have to be gluten.
It's right, that's right. I always use the analogy of like, you poked one hole in your roof or 100, even if you have one hole in your roof, you're gonna get mold throughout your entire attic.
Right.
And that's how gluten is. Like, it just needs to seep in through one of those little openings in those cells, and game on. It's a party down there. And it's,
You know, I have friends that are so gluten-free because I have bread in my house and it might have been on my counter.
and they react to it?
No, they will not eat it. They bring their own salad,
Yeah.
you know? I'm like, okay, whatever works.
I mean, we have patients that we compound because there's cornstarch and it's not always gluten, like medication, in pine tree fiber, which is microcrystalline cellulose. And there's more, I don't know, there's probably 10 or 20 patients that get their medication compounded here, gluten-free, because they can't find a gluten-free, you know, whatever drug they're on.
Is there any truth to it, like if you have Hashimoto's, that you shouldn't be on Armour? Somebody told me that you should be on Synthroid, because Armour's natural and it'll attack it.
There's some truth to that, in my opinion, or to take it a step further, that Armour thyroid is pig thyroid, and there's proteins in that product that your body can develop antibodies to. It can actually attack the medication.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's what they told me.
Well, and I would say, when you get into the whole thyroid side of it, you really want to get T4 and T3.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, again, we could assume that if the patient is on porcine thyroid and they switch to just Synthroid, as long as they have all the machinery set up, which again, I'm not saying they don't, but if they have all the machinery to convert 4 to 3, then Synthroid's fine.
Yeah.
I have no problem with it.
Years ago, a doctor told me, and it was a thyroid specialist, what her name was. That was when I was in my 20s. He told me if they ever come out with a generic Synthroid, do not switch.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I get sick on level. I get real hypothyroid. I don't know why.
I mean, per the FDA, though, you can have a 10% plus or minus on thyroid, or on any drug, really. So, like, if you go to the drugstore tomorrow and you pick up, I don't know, what's a common drug? A Tenolol or a statin drug, and it's 100 milligrams, because that's what your label says. There could be as little as 90 milligrams in that capsule or tablet, and there can be as much as 110. And that's really not a big deal when it comes to, I'll say, most medication, but there's narrow therapeutic ranges for some drugs. Synthroid's one of them. So when you switch from Synthroid brand name to generic, that 10% swing could be a problem. So, yeah.
You should be everybody's doctor.
I hear that a lot too. I know.
See, it's a
The magic pill they want, and they want, yeah.
What harm does nortriptyline do?
Ooh. So nortriptyline, are you using it for sleep?
I'm using them for IBS.
IBS. So because that causes, so nortriptyline is a tricyclic amine, which means nothing other than it's just the drug class it's in. Traditionally used for depression or sleep, but one of the side effects is it slows down the GI tract. It basically causes the enteric system, the nervous system, to slow down and not fire as much. And then you don't go to the you don't have diarrhea as much, or whatever your symptoms are, gas, bloating, because
Due to constipation.
yeah, because it basically you've slowed down the electrical system of your GI tract. That's all that that's doing. I mean, in a simplistic manner, but yeah, yeah. Does it work symptomatically? Yes and no, right? You know, as long as the dose is correct.
But I have to wait 6 weeks to
You know,
one
and
test
if I
and
go
back.
to the
Yes.
hospital,
Get off it.
Yeah, yeah.
they don't have Synthroid.
Who doesn't?
If I go to the hospital,
Oh, yeah. Typically not. I mean, it's hard to find brand name Synthroid, and it's super expensive.
I get it every month. You know, they guarantee, Synthroid has a thing out now. It was advertised, we're in Florida all winter, $75 for 3 months now.
That's a good deal.
And that's what I've been paying. That's a really good deal.
That is a really good deal.
I don't know if they do some different drug thing down there. I hope when I get it here, it's not more.
Made in China.
if
Made
you
it
don't
ch-
have
yeah.
a thyroid, you still take Synthroid?
Well, that's why I take Synthroid.
Yeah.
It's because I don't have a thyroid.
Mhm.
Oh.
Can I ask a question?
Yep,
about
yep.
gluten? I think there's that controversy again. These grains are gluten-free, these have gluten. Is there,
Hmm.
is it, besides wheat, is oat? Is that a gluten?
Well, oats technically not. They don't like the but they're manufactured and there's a contamination of gluten.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with the gluten, they modify the glutamic proteins, that's the biggest issue, like those ancient grains where they
Right.
have natural gluten, it's not modified like even
Right.
organic grains have been so modified, they
Yeah.
don't even really resemble what the real grain was anymore.
That's right. I mean, yeah. You look at the hybridization of wheat. Yeah, and they just
So could we get an ancient grain and be okay with not having inflammation because
Like-
of that?
the amount of gluten.
Yeah. So we'd be
Like
okay with
people will
ancient
go to like
grains?
Europe and they'll eat the bread there and be just fine. Then they come back to the U.S. and their symptoms come back.
Founded in the US.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a place in Fort Ex where we can get
It's like
whole
I-
wheat
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Einkorn wheat.
Einkorn?
Yeah.
The einkorn wheat?
Yeah, einkorn, it's like that's the ancient grains that are,
Mhm.
how clean they are with it, I don't know, but I know you
Yeah.
can get it there.
Where, in Beaver Dam?
No, it's
Fort
Fort
Atkinson.
But the thing is, if you try to use it in bread, it won't raise like we're used to.
Right.
That's why they modify the gluten so that we get this nice
Mhm.
elephant ears,
Yeah.
nice light fluffy,
Yeah.
empty food.
I don't need that, I don't mind it being bread.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. We covered a lot of ground. Holy cow.
Thanks for your time.
I thought 1 hour and we're 3 hours into it. Well, thank you for all staying. I need to go home and sleep. Yeah. Yeah, you come back tomorrow, we'll continue the discussion. Good questions though. All right. Thank you all. I'll stick around for like 10 more minutes if you got another burning question. But,
It's 10:30.
oh, you want to get okay, or I'll go back by the register. I'll do that. Yeah.
Hey, one question.
Yeah.
You said that you would throw in a consult. for
Yes.
that.
Yep.
I couldn't get my husband, could I use that on him?
You could do anybody.
Okay,
Yep.
because then I can
Yeah.
always come back later.
That's right. Yep. 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 I will. Let me. I'm going to scoot around there. Up.
While you're looking it up, Dan.
Yep.
Do you know the medication Zetia?
Yes.
And it reduces the absorption of cholesterol through the small intestine.